Picture this. You're 8 months pregnant, preparing your baby's nursery, when you accidentally overhear your husband through the baby monitor saying, "Don't worry, I'll divorce her before the baby comes." But here's the twist that will blow your mind. The woman he thought was nobody, the wife he threw away like garbage, was actually the secret heir to a $2 billion fashion empire. This is the incredible true story of Claire Bennett, who went from abandoned pregnant wife to global fashion mogul in less than a year. Her narcissistic husband had no idea he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life when he chose a 24-year-old nanny over the woman who would become one of the most powerful businesswomen in America. What happens next will restore your faith in karma and prove that sometimes the universe has perfect timing. Stay with me, because this story has more plot twists than a Hollywood movie, and the revenge. Well, let's just say it's absolutely delicious. The pregnancy test clattered to the marble floor as Claire heard her husband's voice through the baby monitor. "Don't worry, Autumn, I'll divorce her before the baby comes." Claire Bennett pressed her hand against her swollen belly, 8 months pregnant and frozen in the doorway of what was supposed to be her baby's nursery. The voice crackling through the monitor belonged to Harrison Cole, her husband of 3 years. The woman giggling in response was Autumn Hayes, their 24-year-old nanny. "Are you sure she doesn't suspect anything?" Autumn's voice floated through the speaker, sweet as poison. "Claire's too trusting for her own good," Harrison replied with a coldness that made Claire's blood freeze. "She actually thinks I'm working late at the construction company. Poor thing has no idea I've already spoken to divorce attorneys." Claire sank into the rocking chair she'd so carefully chosen for midnight feedings. Her hands shook as she turned up the volume on the monitor. She'd only come upstairs to put away baby clothes, never expecting to overhear her entire life crumbling. "What about the baby?" Autumn asked. "I'll claim she's emotionally unstable. All those mood swings during pregnancy, perfect evidence. My lawyer says I can get full custody and she'll be lucky to get supervised visitation." The cruelty in Harrison's voice shattered something inside Claire. This was the man who'd held her hair while she battled morning sickness, who'd assembled the crib with such excitement, who'd whispered sweet promises about their future family. All lies. Claire gripped the arms of the rocking chair, her wedding ring catching the afternoon sunlight streaming through the nursery windows. 3 years of marriage, and she'd never seen Harrison's true face until now. The successful construction company owner, the charming husband, the excited father-to-be, all an elaborate performance. "When will you tell her?" Autumn pressed. "Tonight. I want her out of the house by tomorrow." Claire's breath caught. Tomorrow she was 8 months pregnant with complications that required bed rest, and he wanted her gone by tomorrow. The baby kicked hard, as if sensing her distress. Claire whispered softly, "It's okay, little one. Mommy will figure this out." But how Harrison controlled their finances. The mansion was in his name. Even her car was registered to his company. She'd given up her marketing job when they married, trusting in their partnership. What a fool she'd been. Footsteps echoed in the hallway below. Claire quickly turned off the monitor and gathered the scattered baby clothes, her mind racing. Should she confront them, pack her bags, and leave call her best friend Grace? The nursery door creaked open. Harrison stood in the doorway, his 6-foot frame filling the space. At 35, he was still handsome in that polished, corporate way that had first attracted her. Dark hair, expensive suits, confident smile. Now that smile made her sick. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "You look tired. Maybe you should rest." Claire studied his face, searching for any trace of the man she'd fallen in love with. "I'm fine. Just getting some things ready for the baby." "Good, good." Harrison's eyes darted around the nursery, never quite meeting hers. "Listen, Claire, we need to talk tonight, after dinner." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "About what?" "Just things. Nothing urgent." He was already backing toward the door. "I'll be in my office until dinner." His office, where Autumn was probably waiting, after Harrison left. Claire sat in the nursery for another 20 minutes, processing the devastating revelation. The man she trusted with her heart, her future, her child's welfare, had been planning to destroy her life with calculated precision. She thought about their recent conversations, Harrison's suggestion that she seemed overwhelmed and might need professional help. His comments about her emotional state to friends and family, he'd been building his case for months, painting her as an unfit mother before she'd even given birth. The narcissistic abuse was so subtle, so systematic, that she'd mistaken it for concern. Claire pulled out her phone with shaking fingers. Grace Mitchell had been her best friend since college and was now a successful family lawyer. If anyone could help her navigate this disaster, it would be Grace. Grace, it's Claire. I need your help. Something terrible has happened. Claire, you sound awful. What's wrong? Harrison is having an affair with our nanny. I just heard them talking through the baby monitor. He's planning to divorce me and claim I'm an unfit mother to get full custody. Silence stretched across the line. Then Grace's professional voice kicked in, sharp and focused. Where are you right now? In the nursery. Harrison's in his office with her. Listen to me carefully. Don't confront them yet. We need to be strategic about this. Can you pack a bag without them knowing? I think so. Good. Pack essentials for you and the baby, important documents, medications, anything irreplaceable. Bring it to my house tonight after dinner. We'll figure out our next move then. Grace, I'm scared. What if he really does get custody? What if I lose my baby? That's not going to happen. Claire, I promise you, Harrison picked the wrong woman to mess with. You're stronger than he thinks, and you've got the best family lawyer in the state on your side. Claire closed her eyes, drawing strength from her friend's confidence. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me after we destroy him in court. After hanging up, Claire methodically packed a suitcase with essentials. Her hands moved automatically while her mind processed the magnitude of Harrison's betrayal. Not just the affair, but the calculated cruelty of his plan. He'd chosen the most vulnerable time in her life to abandon her, when she was carrying his child and completely dependent on him financially. As evening approached, Claire steeled herself for dinner. She would sit across from her cheating husband and pretend normalcy for a few more hours. She would smile and ask about his day, while knowing he'd spent it planning her destruction. But Harrison Cole had made a critical error. He'd underestimated the pregnant wife he thought he could discard like trash. Claire Bennett might be 8 months pregnant and financially vulnerable, but she wasn't broken. Not yet. And she was about to discover she had resources Harrison never dreamed of. Dinner passed like a surreal nightmare. Claire pushed food around her plate while Harrison and Autumn maintained their charade. The nanny serving pot roast with the same hands that had been all over Claire's husband hours earlier. The young woman's bright smile and casual conversation felt like acid on an open wound. Mrs. Cole, you're barely eating, Autumn said with false concern. The baby needs nutrition. Claire met the younger woman's eyes, seeing calculation behind the innocent facade. I'm fine, thank you, Autumn. Harrison barely looked up from his phone. Big project deadline tomorrow. I might be late again. More lies. Claire nodded and excused herself early, claiming exhaustion. In their bedroom, she waited until she heard Harrison's office door close before slipping out with her packed suitcase. Grace Mitchell lived in a modern townhouse across town, a testament to her success as one of the city's top family lawyers. At 45, Grace was everything Claire admired: independent, fierce, and absolutely loyal to the people she loved. She opened the door before Claire could knock. Come here, honey. Grace pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of Claire's pregnant belly. Let's get you settled, then we'll talk strategy. The guest room was already prepared with extra pillows and prenatal vitamins on the nightstand. Grace had thought of everything, as always. Claire sank onto the bed, suddenly exhausted. Tell me everything, Grace said, settling into the armchair with a legal pad. Claire recounted the conversation she'd overheard, watching Grace's expression grow darker with each detail. When she finished, Grace was quiet for a long moment. He's been planning this for months, Grace finally said. The emotional instability angle, the timing right before the baby arrives, having the nanny ready to move in immediately. This isn't impulsive. Claire, this is calculated manipulation. Can he really get custody? Not if I have anything to say about it. Grace's voice was steel. But we need to be smart. Harrison has money and connections. He'll hire the best lawyers he can afford. As if summoned by their conversation, Claire's phone buzzed with a text from Harrison. Where are you? Your car isn't in the garage. He's noticed I'm gone. Claire said, showing Grace the message. Good. Let him panic. Don't respond yet. 20 minutes later, Harrison called. Grace nodded for Claire to answer. Claire, where the hell are you? Harrison's voice was tight with anger, not concern. I'm staying at Grace's tonight. I needed space to think. Think about what come home. This is ridiculous. The commanding tone that used to make Claire feel secure now revealed itself as control. I'll come back tomorrow. You're pregnant. Claire, you need to be home. I'm fine where I am. Harrison's voice shifted, becoming silky and manipulative. Sweetheart, I think the pregnancy hormones are making you emotional. You're not thinking clearly. There it was, the gaslighting Grace had warned her to expect. Claire looked at her friend, who was taking notes. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. Harrison, I'll see you tomorrow. She hung up before he could respond. Her phone immediately started buzzing with calls and texts, but Grace took it and turned it off. Let him stew. Grace said, men like Harrison hate losing control. He'll make mistakes. The next morning brought a harsh wake-up call. Harrison had already moved fast. Claire's credit cards were canceled. Her access to their joint checking account was frozen. The locks on the mansion had been changed. He's trying to force you back, Grace explained as they reviewed the financial devastation over breakfast. Make you desperate so you'll accept whatever scraps he offers. It's working. I have nothing. Grace, no job, no money, no home. You have me, and you have rights. We're filing for emergency spousal support this afternoon. But Harrison's cruelty went deeper than financial manipulation. Claire's phone, which Grace had turned back on, was flooded with messages from Harrison's mother, Margaret Cole. The older woman had never liked Claire, considering her beneath their family's social status. Now Margaret was openly venomous. I always knew you weren't good enough for my son. At least now he can find someone worthy of the Cole name. Another message read, that baby will be better off without an unstable mother. Harrison deserves happiness. Claire stared at the messages, hurt beyond words. Margaret had sat at their wedding, smiled at baby showers, pretended to be family. The mask was off now, revealing the contempt that had always lurked beneath. She's trying to isolate you, Grace observed, reading over Claire's shoulder. Make you feel like no one is on your side. Classic narcissistic family tactics. The afternoon brought worse news. Grace returned from the courthouse grim-faced. Harrison's lawyer filed first. She said, they're claiming you abandoned the marital home and are emotionally unfit to be a mother. They want temporary custody immediately after birth. Claire felt the blood drain from her face. Can they do that? They can try. We'll fight it. But Harrison has an advantage. He's painted himself as the stable, responsible parent while making you look impulsive and unstable. That evening, as Claire tried to rest, she overheard Grace on the phone with another lawyer friend. It's bad, David. She's 8 months pregnant with no resources while he has millions and a 3-year head start on character assassination. We need a miracle. A miracle. Claire touched her belly, feeling the baby's restless movements. Her daughter deserved better than this mess. Deserved better than a father who would use her as a weapon and a mother who couldn't even provide basic security. Claire had married Harrison believing in fairy tales. She'd thought love conquered all, that good people were rewarded, that commitment mattered. Now she understood that some men viewed marriage as a business arrangement and wives as disposable assets. The revelation was devastating and liberating simultaneously. She'd spent 3 years trying to be the perfect wife for an imperfect man. No more. But understanding Harrison's true nature didn't solve her immediate crisis. Tomorrow would bring more legal battles, more financial pressure, more systematic destruction of everything she'd built her life around. Claire fell asleep that night planning survival strategies, unaware that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't imagine. The 8 months pregnant woman grieving her marriage's death had no idea she was about to discover an inheritance that would shift the balance of power permanently. Sometimes the universe has perfect timing. Sometimes it waits until you're stripped of everything false before revealing what was always true. Claire Bennett was about to learn that her real story was just beginning. The prenatal appointment the next morning brought terrifying news. Dr. Sarah Chen, Claire's obstetrician for the past 8 months, looked concerned as she reviewed the ultrasound results. Claire, your blood pressure is elevated, and the baby's showing signs of distress. Doctor, Chen said gently, the stress you're under is affecting both of you. I'm recommending modified bed rest until delivery. Bed rest, Claire's voice cracked. She couldn't afford bed rest. She needed to fight Harrison, find work, rebuild her life. Doctor, I'm in the middle of a divorce. I can't just rest. You don't have a choice. If this continues, we're looking at preterm labor or worse. Your baby's health has to come first. Grace took Claire's hand as they left the medical office. We'll figure this out. You can rest at my place. For how long, Grace? You can't support us indefinitely. I need to get my life together. One day at a time. Honey, one day at a time. That afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Grace answered the door to find a well-dressed Hispanic man in his 40s, holding a leather briefcase and looking distinctly uncomfortable. I'm looking for Claire Bennett, he said. My name is Samuel Torres. I'm a private investigator. Grace's lawyer instincts kicked in immediately. Does this concern her divorce? No, ma'am. This is about her family. Claire emerged from the guest room, moving slowly. I don't understand. What about my family? Samuel Torres had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Mrs. Bennett, may I come in? This is going to sound incredible, but I've been hired to find you by someone in Italy. Italy, Claire sank onto Grace's couch. I don't know anyone in Italy. You do now. Samuel opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick folder. My client is Vincent Romano, owner of Romano Fashion Empire. He believes you are his granddaughter. The words hung in the air like smoke. Grace was the first to speak. That's impossible. Claire was adopted as a baby, but her birth parents were American. Samuel shook his head. That's what everyone believed. But according to my investigation, Claire's birth mother was Lucia Romano, Vincent's daughter who died in a car accident 28 years ago. Claire felt dizzy. My birth mother's name was Lucia, but her last name was Williams, not Romano. She was using an assumed name. Lucia Romano was 18 when she died, and she'd been hiding her pregnancy from her family. She gave birth to you 6 months before the accident. Samuel spread photographs across the coffee table. Claire gasped. The young woman in the pictures looked exactly like her, same dark hair, same green eyes, same delicate bone structure. This is impossible, Claire whispered. There's more. Samuel's voice was gentle but firm. Vincent Romano has been searching for his lost granddaughter for 28 years. His empire is worth over $2 billion, and he has no direct heir. His other children from his first marriage have been fighting over succession for years. Grace leaned forward, her legal mind processing the implications. Why didn't he search earlier? He didn't know Lucia had been pregnant. She kept it secret, even from her American mother's family. It was only recently, when Vincent was diagnosed with terminal cancer, that he found letters Lucia had hidden. Letters about giving her baby up for adoption. Claire stood up shakily, her hand on her belly. This is insane. I'm not an heiress. I'm just a pregnant woman whose husband is trying to steal her baby. Mrs. Bennett, I understand this is overwhelming, but I have DNA evidence that confirms the connection. Lucia's brush, saved by her adoptive grandmother, matches your genetic profile. Governor, my adoptive grandmother. Claire's voice was sharp. Dorothy Whitman. She's still alive. She lives in the retirement community across town. Samuel nodded. Dorothy Whitman has been protecting your identity for 28 years. She knows exactly who you are. The room spun around Claire. Grace caught her arm as she swayed. We're going to see my grandmother right now. Claire said. Sunset Manor was a high-end retirement community where Dorothy Whitman had lived for the past 5 years. At 72, Dorothy was sharp as a tack and fiercely protective of the granddaughter she'd raised after Claire's adoptive parents died in a plane crash when Claire was 12. Dorothy took one look at Samuel Torres and sank into her armchair. I've been waiting for this day for 28 years, she said quietly. Grandma Dot. Claire knelt beside the chair, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. Is it true? Was my birth mother really part of some Italian fashion empire? Dorothy's weathered hands cupped Claire's face. Oh, my sweet girl, I promised your birth mother I'd keep you safe. I promised I'd never tell you unless someone came looking. Why didn't you tell me? Because the Romano family is dangerous. Claire, billions of dollars create enemies. Lucia was terrified someone would hurt her baby. She made me swear to raise you as an ordinary American girl. Samuel leaned forward. Mrs. Whitman, Vincent Romano is dying. He wants to meet his granddaughter and ensure she inherits her rightful share of the empire. Dorothy's eyes flashed. And what about the other Romano children? Isabella and Marco have been fighting over that empire for years. You think they'll welcome an American granddaughter with open arms? Vincent is prepared to protect Claire. He has legal safeguards in place. Grandma Dot, Claire said softly, I need to know the whole truth. Dorothy sighed deeply. Your mother, Lucia, was Vincent's secret daughter with an American woman named Mary Williams. Vincent supported them financially but kept their existence quiet to protect his business interests and his marriage to Isabella's mother. So I really am Vincent Romano's granddaughter. Yes, you sweetheart. You're the secret heiress to a fashion empire worth more money than you can imagine. Claire sat back on her heels, processing 28 years of hidden truth. Harrison is trying to take my baby because he thinks I'm nobody. But I'm not nobody. Grace was taking notes furiously. Claire, this changes everything. Harrison doesn't know about your inheritance. We have leverage now. Samuel handed Claire a business card. Vincent Romano is flying here tomorrow. He wants to meet you before his health deteriorates further. That night, Claire lay in Grace's guest room, staring at the ceiling. 12 hours ago, she'd been a desperate pregnant woman with no resources and a narcissistic ex-husband trying to steal her child. Now she was potentially one of the wealthiest women in America. The irony was perfect. Harrison had divorced her because he thought she was beneath him, too ordinary for the Cole family legacy. He had no idea he'd just thrown away a connection to European fashion royalty. But power brought responsibility. Vincent Romano was a stranger offering incredible wealth in exchange for stepping into a world she didn't understand. Meanwhile, Harrison was still out there, still planning to take her baby. The baby kicked hard, as if reminding Claire that whatever decision she made would affect both of them. Claire placed her hands on her belly. What do you think? Little one, ready to become a Romano? Tomorrow would bring answers. Tomorrow she would meet the grandfather who'd been searching for her across continents and decades. Tomorrow, Claire Bennett would start becoming someone entirely new. Vincent Romano arrived in town like a force of nature. His private jet landed at the municipal airport at precisely 10 in the morning, followed by 3 black sedans carrying security personnel. Samuel Torres had arranged the meeting at the penthouse suite of the city's most exclusive hotel. Claire stood at Grace's bathroom mirror, trying to calm her nerves. She'd chosen a simple black maternity dress. Her only jewelry, the wedding ring she couldn't quite bring herself to remove. In 12 hours, she would meet the grandfather she'd never known existed. You don't have to do this today, Grace said from the doorway. Your blood pressure, the stress. I need to do this. Harrison's lawyers are circling like vultures. If this inheritance is real, it's my daughter's future. The hotel suite occupied the entire top floor, with panoramic views of the city Claire had called home her entire life. Vincent Romano stood with his back to the door when they entered, a slight figure in an expensive Italian suit, staring out at the skyline. When he turned around, Claire's breath caught. The family resemblance was undeniable. Vincent had the same green eyes, the same delicate bone structure she'd inherited. At 62, he still carried himself with the confidence of a man who commanded a global empire, but illness had carved lines of pain around his eyes. Chiara, he said softly, using the Italian version of her name. Claire, she corrected automatically, then felt rude. I'm sorry, I've never been called Chiara. You look exactly like your mother. Vincent's voice carried decades of grief. Lucia was so beautiful, so full of life. I failed her, and I failed you. Claire remained standing near the door, Grace beside her like a protective shield. Why didn't you search for me sooner? Because I didn't know you existed until 6 months ago. Vincent moved to a leather armchair, his movements careful and measured. When the doctors told me I had perhaps a year to live, I decided to sort through Lucia's belongings. I found letters she'd hidden, letters about her pregnancy, and her plans to give the baby up for adoption. She gave me up to protect me. The Romano name carries weight in Europe, but it also carries danger. Lucia was terrified that business enemies or family rivals might use an innocent child as leverage. She thought you'd be safer as an ordinary American girl. Samuel Torres had prepared folders of documentation. Claire flipped through photographs of Lucia Romano at 18. So young, so scared, so remarkably similar to Claire herself at that age. She died 6 months after I was born. Claire said, "A car accident on a rainy night. She was coming home from visiting you at the adoption agency." Vincent's voice broke slightly. If I'd known, if I'd been there, Mr. Romano, Grace interrupted professionally. What exactly are you offering my client? Vincent's businessman persona snapped back into place. Claire is my direct heir. Romano fashion empire is worth $2.3 billion. She would inherit 50% immediately upon verification of her identity, and the remaining 50% upon my death. Claire felt the baby kick hard, as if reacting to the staggering numbers. 50% of $2 billion, $1.15 billion, plus controlling interest in the company. My other children, Isabella and Marco, would inherit the remainder, but you would be the primary heir. Grace was scribbling notes. What about legal challenges? Won't your other children contest this? They can try. I've spent 6 months with the best lawyers in Milan preparing ironclad documentation. Isabella and Marco have always known they might not inherit everything. I've been very clear about that. Claire walked to the windows, looking down at the city where Harrison thought he was destroying her life. Why should I believe any of this is real? Because of this. Vincent opened a briefcase and withdrew a jewelry box. Inside was a necklace unlike anything Claire had ever seen, white gold and diamonds that caught the light like captured stars. This was your great-grandmother's. It's been passed down through 5 generations of Romano women. Your mother wore it at her confirmation. Vincent held up a photograph of young Lucia wearing the same necklace. It was meant to be yours. The weight of destiny settled around Claire's shoulders like a cashmere shawl. This wasn't just about money. It was about identity, belonging, family legacy spanning generations. There's something else, Vincent said quietly. Isabella is flying in from Milan tomorrow. She's not pleased about sharing her inheritance with an American cousin she's never met. Meaning Isabella Romano is brilliant, ruthless, and has spent 35 years believing she would control the family empire. She won't give up that dream easily. Grace's phone buzzed. She looked at the caller ID and frowned. It's Harrison's lawyer. They probably heard about the meeting somehow. Don't answer, Vincent said sharply. Not yet. Let them wonder. As if summoned by the mention of his name, Harrison himself appeared in the hotel lobby downstairs. Samuel Torres spotted him through the windows and immediately alerted building security. He's trying to get up here, Samuel reported through his earpiece. Hotel security is handling it. Vincent's expression hardened. This is the man who threw out my pregnant granddaughter. Harrison doesn't know about any of this, Claire said. He thinks I'm just a desperate ex-wife with no resources. Then let's keep it that way for now. Give us time to establish your legal position before he realizes what he's lost. Grace was studying the inheritance documentation. Vincent, this is incredibly generous, but Claire needs to understand the responsibilities involved. Running a global fashion empire isn't like managing a household budget. Isabella will handle day-to-day operations initially. Claire would have time to learn the business while establishing her American presence. Vincent turned to Claire. I'm not asking you to move to Milan tomorrow. I'm asking you to claim what's rightfully yours and build the life Lucia wanted for you. The baby kicked again, harder this time. Claire winced and sat down. The stress is affecting her, Grace said. She needs time to process this. Of course. Vincent stood with visible effort. Claire, I know this is overwhelming. Take tonight to think about it. But understand that Harrison is not going away quietly. Men like him fight hardest when they realize they've underestimated their opponents. As they prepared to leave, Vincent handed Claire a card. My direct number. Call me anytime, day or night, and Claire, wear the necklace tomorrow. It's time you started looking like the Romano heiress you were born to be. That evening, Claire sat in Grace's living room, holding the Romano family necklace up to the light. The diamonds threw rainbows across the walls, each one worth more than most people made in a year. Grace, what if I can't do this? What if I'm not smart enough or strong enough to run a $1 billion company? Honey, you survived 3 years married to a narcissistic ex-husband without losing yourself. You're stronger than you know. But this is so much bigger than anything I've ever handled. Grace sat beside her. You know what I think? I think Lucia would be proud. She gave up everything to keep you safe, and now you have the chance to claim the life she always wanted for you. Claire fastened the necklace around her throat. The weight felt right, like something that had always been missing finally clicking into place. Tomorrow would bring Isabella Romano and whatever challenges came with her. Tomorrow would bring decisions that would shape not just Claire's future, but her daughter's inheritance. Tonight, for the first time in weeks, Claire felt powerful. Harrison had thrown away a Romano. He just didn't know it yet. Vincent Romano's health took a dramatic turn for the worse overnight. Claire woke to Samuel Torres calling at 6 in the morning, his voice tight with concern. Vincent collapsed in his hotel suite. He's stable, but he's asking for you. He wants to have a formal conversation about the inheritance before Isabella arrives this afternoon. Claire dressed carefully, choosing a navy maternity dress and, after a moment's hesitation, the Romano family necklace. The diamonds felt cool against her skin, a tangible reminder that her life had changed forever. Grace drove her to the hospital, where Vincent had been moved to a private suite. Despite the oxygen cannula and IV lines, he looked more alert than he had the previous day. Kiara, he said, reaching for her hand. I'm glad you came. How are you feeling? Like a man running out of time. Vincent's grip was surprisingly strong. Which is why we need to discuss practical matters. Isabella lands in 2 hours, and she's bringing the family lawyer from Milan to challenge my inheritance, to evaluate you. Isabella's not just my daughter, she's been groomed to run Romano fashion since she was 16. She's brilliant, ruthless, and doesn't believe in sentiment when it comes to business. Claire settled into the visitor's chair, her hand protectively covering her belly. What do you need me to understand? The fashion industry is warfare disguised as art. Our competitors would destroy Romano fashion tomorrow if they could. Our business partners are allies only as long as it's profitable. And our family legacy spans 5 generations of women who fought to build something lasting. Vincent's voice grew stronger as he spoke about the company he'd built. Your great-great-grandmother started with a single sewing machine in Naples. Each generation of Romano women has added to the empire: factories, retail stores, design houses, now global digital presence. You're not just inheriting money, Kiara, you're inheriting responsibility. I don't know anything about fashion. Neither did I when I inherited the company from your grandmother. But I learned, and I expanded into international markets. You have something I didn't have you understand: American consumers. Romano fashion needs an American presence to compete globally. Grace knocked on the door. Vincent, Isabella Romano just arrived. She's downstairs with hotel security, demanding to see you. Vincent's eyes sharpened. Send her up. It's time. Isabella Romano swept into the hospital room like a force of nature. At 35, she was stunning in the way only European women seem to master: perfectly cut black hair, flawless makeup, a tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. Her eyes, the same green as Claire's, assessed everything with calculating intelligence. Papa, she said, kissing Vincent's cheek. Then she turned to Claire. So you're the American who claims to be Lucia's daughter? I am Lucia's daughter, Claire replied calmly. We'll see. Isabella's smile was sharp as a blade. I've brought our family's lawyer, and I expect complete DNA verification before any inheritance discussions continue. Isabella, be polite. Claire is your sister. A half-sister, possibly, and sisters in business can be more dangerous than enemies. Isabella sat down, crossing her legs with predatory grace. Claire, tell me about your qualifications for running a global fashion empire? I don't have any. Isabella blinked, clearly expecting defensiveness or false bravado. At least you're honest? I spent 3 years married to a man who controlled every aspect of my life. I'm 8 months pregnant and going through a divorce that's designed to leave me with nothing. I found out yesterday that I have a grandfather I never knew existed. So no, I don't have qualifications for running your family business. Our family business, if the DNA confirms what Papa believes, Claire met Isabella's gaze steadily. I'm not trying to take anything from you. A week ago, I'd never heard the name Romano, but I'm not going to apologize for existing or for being Lucia's daughter. Something shifted in Isabella's expression. You have spine. Good. You'll need it. The door opened again, and Samuel Torres entered with a laboratory technician carrying DNA testing equipment. The results will be available in 4 hours with the rapid processing. As the technician collected samples, Vincent watched both his daughters carefully. Isabella, what's the status of the Milan headquarters? Second quarter profits are up 18%. The new handbag line is performing well in Asian markets. Marco wants to expand production facilities in Romania, but I think we should focus on digital marketing instead. Claire listened to the conversation, understanding perhaps 20% of what they discussed, but recognizing the passion in Isabella's voice. This woman had devoted her life to Romano fashion. Claire, Vincent said, what's your impression of our business discussion? Claire considered carefully. Isabella knows the company inside and out. She's invested her entire identity in its success. I'd be stupid to think I could walk in and take over something she spent years building. Isabella looked surprised again. And I'd be equally stupid to think you'd welcome a pregnant American stranger claiming half your inheritance. True. So if the DNA test confirms I'm Lucia's daughter, we need to figure out how to work together instead of destroying each other. Vincent smiled for the first time since entering the hospital. Lucia would be proud. Isabella pulled out her phone and started typing. I'm moving my return flight to Milan. If you're really my sister, we need to have serious conversations about company structure and responsibility divisions. You don't have to change your plans for me. Yes, I do. Isabella's voice was matter-of-fact. Because if Papa's right about you, then Romano fashion just became infinitely more complicated, and I don't like complications I haven't planned for. Grace had been taking notes through the entire exchange. Now she leaned forward. What happens if Claire accepts the inheritance? Practically speaking, Vincent struggled to sit up straighter. $50 million transfers immediately into an account controlled solely by Claire. Legal ownership of 50% of all Romano assets follows within 30 days. And Claire becomes co-president of Romano Fashion Empire, with Isabella as her partner. Co-president, Claire's voice cracked. Equal partners, Isabella added, which means equal responsibility when things go wrong. The weight of the offer settled around Claire like a lead blanket. $50 million would solve every problem Harrison had created and provide security for her daughter beyond imagination. But it would also thrust her into a world she didn't understand, with responsibilities she'd never trained for. The baby kicked hard, as if offering an opinion on the conversation. There's one more thing, Vincent said quietly. If you accept the inheritance, you can't go back to being ordinary Claire Bennett. The Romano name carries expectations, obligations, and dangers. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny? Claire thought about Harrison, probably at that moment planning how to destroy her reputation in court. She thought about her daughter, who deserved better than a mother fleeing from a narcissistic ex-husband with nothing but the clothes on her back. Most of all, she thought about Lucia, 18 years old and terrified, giving up her baby to protect her from exactly this kind of overwhelming responsibility. I need to know something first, Claire said. Isabella, do you want me to walk away? Would it be easier for everyone if I just disappeared and let you inherit everything? Isabella was quiet for a long moment. Ask me again after we get the DNA results. The DNA results arrived with the force of destiny, 99.7% probability that Claire was indeed Vincent's granddaughter. Isabella stared at the laboratory report for 30 seconds without speaking. Well, she finally said, I suppose congratulations are in order. Sister? Vincent was released from the hospital that afternoon with strict instructions for rest and medication. Instead, he insisted on returning to his hotel suite to begin Claire's crash course in Romano Fashion Empire operations. The American market represents 32% of our global sales, Isabella explained, spreading financial reports across the coffee table. But we're losing ground to younger brands with stronger social media presence. Claire studied the numbers, her head spinning. These profit margins seem incredible. They are. Luxury consumers pay premium prices for exclusivity and craftsmanship, but the market is evolving. American women want authenticity, not just European prestige. Meaning, meaning you might actually be valuable, Isabella said with a slight smile. You understand American consumer psychology in ways Milan headquarters never will. The afternoon passed in a blur of business education. Claire learned about manufacturing processes, retail distribution, marketing strategies, and international tax implications. By 5 o'clock, her brain felt like overloaded electrical circuitry. That's when Harrison struck. Grace's phone rang first, then Samuel's, then the hotel's main line. Harrison had discovered Claire's location and was demanding access. He's brought reporters, Samuel reported from the lobby. And Autumn Hayes. They're claiming Claire has been kidnapped or is having a mental breakdown. Vincent's expression turned glacial. No one threatens a Romano. No one. Isabella was already on her phone, speaking rapid Italian to someone in Milan. Security team will be here in 20 minutes. Americans are so dramatic. Grace looked at Claire. We have to deal with this. Harrison's not going away quietly. Then let's not hide anymore, Claire said, surprising herself with her calm tone. Let's go downstairs and show Harrison exactly who he threw away. The hotel lobby had become a circus. Harrison stood near the elevators with Autumn at his side, both of them perfectly groomed for the cameras. 2 local news crews were filming while hotel security tried to maintain order. Claire stepped off the elevator wearing the Romano family necklace and Isabella's borrowed designer coat. The diamonds caught the lobby's crystal chandelier lights, creating a shimmer effect that made her look almost otherworldly. Harrison's face went white when he saw her. Claire, what the hell is that jewelry? Where did you get those clothes? Hello, Harrison. Claire's voice carried new authority. I see you brought your girlfriend to a public confrontation. How thoughtful. The reporters immediately focused on the love triangle angle, microphones thrust toward all 3 participants. Autumn, suddenly realizing she was on camera as the other woman, tried to hide behind Harrison. Claire, you need to come home, Harrison said, clearly performing for the cameras. You're not thinking clearly. The pregnancy hormones are working perfectly fine. Thank you. Claire placed her hand protectively over her belly. I'm exactly where I belong. With these strangers, Claire, you don't even know who these people are. Isabella stepped forward, and Claire saw exactly why she'd been groomed to run a global empire. Mr. Cole, I presume I'm Isabella Romano, Claire's sister. We've been having the most interesting conversations about your character. Harrison's confusion was visible. Sister Claire doesn't have a sister. She does now. Vincent appeared beside Claire, moving slowly but with unmistakable dignity. Vincent Romano, Claire's grandfather. And you must be the man who divorced my granddaughter while she was 8 months pregnant. The lobby fell silent. Everyone present could feel the shift in power dynamics, like watching tectonic plates realign. Harrison's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. Romano as in Romano fashion empire. Vincent confirmed. Worth approximately $2.3 billion. Claire just inherited half of it. The reporters exploded into questions. Cameras flashed. Autumn Hayes looked like she was going to faint. Harrison's carefully constructed narrative stable businessman versus unstable ex-wife crumbled in real time. Claire, we need to talk privately. I don't think so, Grace interjected, appearing at Claire's other side. All communication goes through my office now. This is insane. Harrison's voice cracked with desperation. Claire, yesterday you were broke and homeless. This has to be some kind of scam. The only scam was our marriage, Claire replied evenly. But thank you for clarifying your priorities on camera. Isabella was enjoying the spectacle immensely. Mr. Cole, perhaps you'd like to explain to these reporters why you chose to divorce a pregnant woman for the family television audience? Harrison realized he was trapped in his own publicity stunt. Every word he spoke was being recorded. Every expression was being photographed. The man who'd planned to destroy Claire's reputation was destroying his own instead. We should go, Autumn whispered urgently. This looks bad. No, Harrison said, his business instincts finally kicking in. Claire, if this inheritance is real, we need to discuss our daughter's future. She's still my child too. Yes, she is, Claire's voice softened slightly. And she deserves better than parents who hate each other. But that doesn't mean I'm going back to being your victim. I never, Harrison started, then stopped. The reporters were recording everything. Vincent stepped closer to Harrison, and despite being older and smaller, he somehow seemed to tower over the younger man. Mr. Cole, my granddaughter has told me about your plans for custody. I want you to understand something very clearly. I'm listening. Claire is now under the protection of the Romano family. We have resources you cannot imagine and connections that span continents. If you attempt to harm her or take her child through legal manipulation, you will discover exactly how much power $2 billion can purchase. The threat was delivered quietly, almost conversationally, which made it infinitely more frightening than shouting would have been. Harrison's face flushed red. Are you threatening me? I'm clarifying the situation. Vincent replied, Claire is no longer the vulnerable woman you thought you could destroy. She's a Romano. We protect our own. The confrontation ended with Harrison and Autumn retreating through the hotel's back exit, followed by reporters shouting questions. Claire watched them go, feeling something fundamental shift inside her chest. 3 days ago, she'd been a discarded wife fleeing with nothing but a suitcase. Now she stood in a luxury hotel lobby, wearing a $1 million necklace, surrounded by family who would fight for her. How do you feel? Isabella asked as they rode the elevator back to Vincent's suite. Powerful, Claire said, and terrified. Good, that's exactly how you should feel. Vincent was exhausted by the day's events, but insisted on one final conversation before resting. Claire, tomorrow Isabella flies back to Milan to prepare the company for your involvement. You'll need to decide how quickly you want to take active control of your inheritance. For one, what do you recommend? Isabella and Vincent exchanged glances. Normally, we'd suggest a gradual transition over several months, Isabella said. But your situation is unique. Harrison will escalate his attacks once he realizes what he's lost. You need resources and legal protection immediately. Meaning we transfer the $50 million tomorrow and establish your official position as co-president of Romano Fashion America. You'll be untouchable legally and financially. Claire looked around the suite, at the grandfather she'd known for 2 days, and the sister who was still evaluating whether to trust her. Tomorrow would make her one of the wealthiest women in America. Tomorrow would make her responsible for thousands of employees and billions in assets. Tomorrow would make her everything Harrison had never believed she could be. Let's do it, she said. Isabella Romano proved that genetics could skip generations in unexpected ways. While Vincent was diplomatic and measured, his legitimate daughter possessed the ruthless edge of a medieval queen. She spent her remaining 2 days in America systematically testing Claire's resolve, intelligence, and worthiness to inherit half the family empire. Tell me about American retail psychology, Isabella said over breakfast at the hotel's restaurant. She'd chosen a corner table with clear sight lines to all entrances, a habit Claire was learning, of someone who'd grown up wealthy and cautious. I worked in marketing before I married Harrison, Claire said, grateful she could contribute something relevant. American women want authentic connection to brands, not just prestige. They research companies' values, labor practices, environmental impact. Interesting. Our European customers care primarily about craftsmanship and exclusivity. American customers care about those things too, but they also want to feel good about their purchases. Ethical manufacturing, diverse advertising, community involvement. Isabella made notes on her tablet. Romano Fashion has always focused on tradition and luxury. You're suggesting we need to modernize our brand philosophy. I'm suggesting your American division needs to speak to American values while maintaining Romano quality. Our American division, Isabella corrected with the slightest emphasis. If this partnership works, the correction was subtle but significant. Isabella was testing whether Claire understood the collaborative nature of their inheritance, not just its financial benefits. Right, our American division. That afternoon brought more complex challenges. Isabella spread architectural plans across Vincent's suite, detailing the proposed Romano Fashion America headquarters. Manhattan or Los Angeles? She asked without preamble. Claire studied the plans. Both locations offered obvious advantages, but Manhattan's costs were astronomical, while Los Angeles felt too removed from traditional fashion centers. Neither, she said finally. Chicago. Isabella's eyebrows rose. Chicago. Central location for American distribution, lower overhead than Manhattan, but more fashion credibility than Los Angeles. Access to Great Lakes shipping for international imports, and it's where I want to raise my daughter. Practical and personal reasons. I approve. Isabella made more notes. But Chicago means building our American presence from scratch instead of acquiring existing facilities, which means we control every aspect of the brand experience from the beginning. Isabella smiled, the first genuinely warm expression Claire had seen from her. You think like a Romano. Vincent watched their exchanges with obvious satisfaction. His health was deteriorating daily, but his spirits improved as he saw his daughters find common ground. On Isabella's final day, she requested a private conversation with Claire. Grace and Samuel Torres were tactfully dismissed while the two women walked the hotel's rooftop garden. I need to tell you something about our family, Isabella began, her usual confidence replaced by unexpected vulnerability. We're not just wealthy, Claire, we're targets. What do you mean? 5 years ago, someone attempted to kidnap me in Milan. 3 years ago, our factory in Naples was bombed by competitors trying to destroy our leather production. Last year, Marco's apartment was burglarized not for valuables, but for company secrets. Claire felt cold despite the afternoon sunshine. Are you trying to scare me away? I'm trying to prepare you. When Vincent announces your inheritance publicly, you'll become a target for every criminal, competitor, and gold digger in 2 continents. Your daughter will be a potential kidnapping victim from the moment she's born. Maybe I should reconsider. No, Isabella's voice was sharp. Don't you dare back down now, but understand that being a Romano means accepting certain risks along with incredible privileges. They walked in silence for several minutes. Finally, Claire asked, do you want me to succeed or fail? Isabella considered the question seriously. I want you to succeed, but only if you're strong enough to deserve success. Romano fashion has survived 5 generations because weak family members were removed from leadership before they could cause damage. And if I'm weak, then I'll remove you myself, sister or not. The honesty was brutal and somehow reassuring. Isabella wasn't pretending they'd become instant best friends. She was offering the harder gift of respectful partnership. I appreciate your directness, Claire said. Good, because there's something else. When the inheritance becomes public knowledge, Harrison will become exponentially more dangerous? How so? Right now, he's a petty narcissistic ex-husband who thinks he lost a house in a custody battle. Soon he'll realize he threw away a connection to one of Europe's most powerful families. Men like Harrison don't handle that kind of humiliation well. As if summoned by their conversation, Grace called with urgent news. Harrison's filed for emergency custody, citing parental kidnapping and mental incapacity. The hearing is tomorrow morning. Isabella's expression hardened. He's accelerating his timeline. Smart move. Can he win? Claire asked Grace through the phone. Not with our new resources, but he can cause significant problems. We need to be in court looking completely stable and competent. That evening, Vincent called Claire to his bedside for what they all understood might be their final private conversation. I'm proud of you, he said simply. Lucia would be proud too. I haven't done anything yet. You've survived Harrison's betrayal without becoming bitter. You've earned Isabella's respect in 3 days, and you're preparing to protect your daughter while building something meaningful for her future. Vincent's voice was barely above a whisper. That's everything, cara mia. Claire kissed his forehead. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for being worth finding. The next morning brought chaos. Harrison had somehow convinced Judge Thomas Reed to hold an emergency custody hearing, claiming Claire was being manipulated by foreign nationals with questionable motives. Isabella insisted on attending, despite having a flight to Milan that evening. Romano family supports its own, she said simply. The courthouse was another media circus, but this time Claire was prepared. She wore a conservative navy suit, minimal makeup, and the Romano necklace tucked discreetly inside her blouse. She looked exactly like what she was, a pregnant woman protecting her child's interests. Harrison's strategy became clear immediately. His lawyer painted Claire as an unstable woman who'd abandoned her home for mysterious foreign nationals claiming impossible family connections. Your Honor, Harrison's attorney argued, Mrs. Cole left her marital home without discussion, moved in with strangers claiming to be relatives from Italy, and is now making fantastic claims about inheriting billions of dollars. This behavior pattern suggests serious mental health issues that could endanger the child. Grace stood to respond, and Claire saw why she'd built such a successful practice. Your Honor, my client discovered her husband's affair through accidental means, left the home temporarily for emotional support, and was subsequently contacted by legitimate private investigators representing her biological family. DNA testing has confirmed these family relationships, and the inheritance claims are fully documented. Documented by whom, the judge asked. Samuel Torres presented a briefcase full of legal verification, birth certificates, DNA analyses, corporate documentation from Romano Fashion Empire, and affidavits from Italian legal authorities. Judge Reed reviewed the paperwork carefully. Meanwhile, Harrison was having an increasingly frantic, whispered conversation with his attorney. Claire could see him realizing, in real time, the magnitude of his miscalculation. Mrs. Cole, the judge addressed Claire directly. These documents appear legitimate, but the timing seems convenient. How do you explain your family's sudden appearance during your divorce proceedings? Claire stood carefully, her 8-month pregnancy making movement awkward. Your Honor, my grandfather has been searching for me for 6 months since learning of my existence. The timing of his contact with divorce proceedings is coincidental. I would never have known about my biological family if Mr. Cole hadn't chosen to end our marriage. And you believe these inheritance claims are genuine? Grace handed Claire a bank statement. Your Honor, $50 million was deposited in my client's account yesterday as the first installment of her inheritance. The Romano family doesn't make empty promises. The courtroom fell silent. Even Harrison's lawyer looked stunned. Judge Reed studied the bank statement, then looked at Harrison. Mr. Cole, it appears your wife has significant financial resources. Are you certain you want to proceed with custody claims based on her alleged financial instability? Harrison's face cycled through multiple expressions before settling on desperate calculation. Your Honor, the money doesn't change the fact that my wife abandoned our home and our marriage for strangers. Strangers who happen to be her biological family. The judge noted dryly. Isabella chose that moment to stand and approach the bench. Your Honor, I'm Isabella Romano, Claire's sister and representative of Romano Fashion Empire. May I address the court? The judge nodded, clearly fascinated by the unfolding drama. Your Honor, my family has operated internationally for over 100 years. We understand the importance of stability, particularly for children. My sister hasn't been manipulated or coerced. She's been welcomed home. Isabella's presence transformed the courtroom dynamic. Elegant, confident, and obviously wealthy. She provided living proof that Claire's claims weren't delusions. The hearing concluded with Judge Reed denying Harrison's emergency custody petition and ordering mediation for ongoing custody discussions. But the real victory was psychological. Harrison left the courthouse looking like a man who'd finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. That evening, Claire accompanied Isabella to the airport for her flight back to Milan. When will I see you again? Claire asked. 2 weeks. I'll return for your daughter's birth and your official introduction to American media as Romano Fashion's co-president. I'm scared I'll disappoint everyone. Isabella hugged her, the first purely sisterly gesture between them. Claire, you just faced down a narcissistic ex-husband in open court while 8 months pregnant. You're tougher than you realize. What if I'm not? Then you'll become tougher. We're Romanos. We adapt. We survive. And we win. 2 weeks later, Claire went into labor during a board meeting conference call with Milan. Isabella, who had returned to America as promised, took charge with the efficiency of someone accustomed to managing crises. End the call, she instructed Grace while helping Claire to the car. The American division can wait. This baby cannot. Lucia Dorothy Romano Bennett was born at 3:47 in the morning, weighing 7 pounds and 2 ounces. Claire held her daughter for the first time surrounded by an extraordinary collection of people. Grace, her chosen family, Vincent, her biological grandfather, Isabella, her newfound sister, and Dorothy, the grandmother who'd kept family secrets for 28 years. Harrison was notably absent, despite being legally notified of the birth. She's perfect, Vincent whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Lucia would have been so proud. The baby opened her eyes, Romano green, like 4 generations before her, and seemed to study the faces surrounding her. Claire felt something fundamental shift inside her chest. This child would never wonder about her identity or struggle to provide basic security. Lucia Bennett might have been born into uncertainty, but she was already an heiress. 2 days after the birth, Harrison finally appeared at the hospital with Autumn in tow. Claire was nursing the baby when they arrived, protected by security guards Isabella had insisted upon. "I want to see my daughter," Harrison announced to the security guard. Grace, who had become a permanent fixture at Claire's side, stood immediately. "You have legal visitation rights, but they don't begin until Claire and the baby are released from medical care." "That's my child too," Harrison said, but his voice lacked its usual commanding tone. He looked older, more desperate, like a man watching his world collapse in slow motion. "Yes, she is your biological daughter," Claire agreed calmly. "But she's also a Romano, which means she'll grow up understanding both her American and Italian heritage." Harrison's face darkened. "We'll see about that." The threat was empty and everyone knew it. Harrison's legal position had deteriorated significantly since Claire's inheritance became public knowledge. Multiple media outlets had covered the story of the secret Romano heiress, painting Claire as a modern Cinderella and Harrison as the villain who'd thrown away a fortune. More damaging was the business fallout. Harrison's construction company was facing investigations for the financial irregularities Grace had uncovered. His affair with the nanny had become public record through divorce proceedings. Corporate partners were distancing themselves from the scandal. "Harrison," Claire said gently, "Lucia is your daughter and she always will be, but she's also Vincent's great-granddaughter and Isabella's niece. She has a heritage that extends beyond your anger at me. You think money changes everything. I think love changes everything, and you chose to walk away from love for what you thought was a younger, easier replacement." Autumn shifted uncomfortably beside him, clearly wishing she were anywhere else. The role of other woman had become significantly less appealing once the affair's consequences became public. Vincent, despite his failing health, had insisted on being present for this confrontation. He sat quietly in the corner, observing Harrison with the calculating gaze of someone who'd spent decades assessing business opponents. "Mr. Cole," Vincent said finally, "you're welcome to maintain a relationship with your daughter, but understand that she will be raised as a Romano. She'll understand her worth, her heritage, and her responsibilities. She'll never accept being treated as disposable." "Are you threatening me again?" "I'm educating you about your daughter's future. Lucia will grow up with resources and protection you cannot imagine. She'll also grow up with clear expectations about how people should treat each other." The conversation ended with Harrison agreeing to standard visitation schedules and joint custody arrangements. But everyone present understood the power dynamics had permanently shifted. Harrison would always be Lucia's father, but Claire controlled every other aspect of their daughter's life. Over the following months, Claire began her transformation from abandoned wife to global fashion executive. Isabella proved to be a demanding but effective mentor, designing an education program that would prepare Claire for corporate leadership while allowing time for new motherhood. American market penetration requires understanding regional differences. Isabella explained during one of their video conference calls. New York values sophistication. Los Angeles values innovation. Chicago values authenticity. We need marketing strategies for each demographic. Claire found herself genuinely engaged by the business challenges. Romano fashion was more than a luxury brand. It was a cultural institution with responsibility to employees, customers, and communities across multiple continents. The Chicago headquarters opened 6 months after Lucia's birth, with Claire cutting the ribbon while holding her daughter. The symbolism was perfect American division led by an American Romano, representing both tradition and innovation. Harrison attended the opening ceremony, standing in the back of the crowd with obvious discomfort. His presence was awkward but necessary. He remained Lucia's father, even if he'd forfeited any claim to Claire's respect or affection. During the reception, Margaret Cole approached Claire for their first conversation since the divorce. Harrison's mother looked older, more fragile, stripped of the arrogance that had once defined her interactions with Claire. "I want to apologize," Margaret said simply. Claire, holding Lucia while networking with Chicago's business elite, studied her former mother-in-law carefully. For what specifically? For treating you as beneath our family when you were the best thing that ever happened to Harrison. Thank you for saying that. I was wrong about everything. Harrison was wrong about everything. Hunter, Margaret's voice cracked slightly. We threw away something precious for something worthless. Claire felt unexpected sympathy for the older woman. Margaret, you can still be part of Lucia's life if you want. She's your granddaughter regardless of what happened between Harrison and me. I'd like that very much. The conversation represented something Claire had never expected closure. Not the dramatic confrontation she'd sometimes fantasized about, but the quiet satisfaction of forgiveness offered from a position of strength. A year after Lucia's birth, Vincent Romano died peacefully in his sleep while visiting the Chicago headquarters. His final act was signing documents that formally transferred full ownership of Romano Fashion Empire to Claire and Isabella as equal partners. The funeral in Milan attracted global attention. Fashion industry leaders, European aristocracy, and business moguls gathered to honor a man who'd built something lasting across generations. Claire stood beside Isabella during the service, holding Lucia and understanding fully for the first time the weight of Romano legacy. He was proud of you, Isabella said as they watched Vincent's casket being carried from the cathedral. He barely knew me for 6 months. He knew everything he needed to know. You honored Lucia's memory, protected your daughter, and earned your inheritance instead of just accepting it. That evening, as Claire and Isabella reviewed business documents in Vincent's Milan office, they found a sealed letter addressed to both of them. My dear daughters, if you're reading this, then Romano Fashion Empire is in capable hands. Claire, you brought fresh perspective and American wisdom to our family legacy. Isabella, you provided the experience and dedication necessary for continued success. Together, you represent the future I always hoped for, but never dared expect. Remember that our business is more than profit and prestige. We provide beauty, craftsmanship, and dignity of work for thousands of people. Protect that responsibility as fiercely as you protect each other. With love and pride, Papa Vincent. 2 years after discovering her Romano heritage, Claire stood in the Chicago headquarters executive suite, reviewing quarterly reports while Lucia played in the attached nursery. Romano Fashion America had exceeded all projections, with Claire earning recognition as one of Forbes' 40 under 40 inches business leaders. The transformation was complete, but not without ongoing challenges. Harrison had married Autumn in a quick ceremony 6 months after their divorce was finalized, but the marriage was already showing signs of strain. Autumn had expected to inherit Claire's abandoned lifestyle, not to support a man whose business was failing and whose reputation was permanently damaged. Claire felt no satisfaction in Harrison's struggles, only relief that she'd escaped before destroying more years on a fundamentally flawed relationship. The narcissistic abuse that had once controlled her life now seemed like a bad dream from someone else's experience. Margaret Cole had become a devoted grandmother to Lucia, slowly rebuilding relationships she'd damaged through years of entitled behavior. Grace remained Claire's closest friend and primary legal counsel, though she now managed Romano Fashion's American legal affairs instead of divorce proceedings. Dorothy Whitman, at 74, had moved to Chicago to be closer to her great-granddaughter and the family secrets she'd protected for 3 decades. She spent afternoons in the Romano headquarters nursery, telling Lucia stories about her great-great-grandmother's sewing machine and the journey from Naples to global empire. Most surprisingly, Isabella had decided to split her time between Milan and Chicago. Recognizing that the American market required hands-on leadership, the two sisters had developed genuine respect and affection, built on shared challenges rather than shared history. Lucia's first word was fashion. Claire told Isabella during one of their evening conference calls, "Of course it was. She's a Romano. Actually, it was fish, but I'm pretending it was fashion." Isabella's laughter carried across the Atlantic. Close enough. As Claire ended the call and prepared to leave the office, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from abandoned pregnant wife to co-president of a global empire. The transformation had required strength she hadn't known she possessed, courage she'd been forced to develop, and wisdom she'd earned through surviving Harrison's systematic attempts to destroy her self-worth. But most importantly, It had required accepting help from family she'd never known existed and learning to trust her own instincts after years of gaslighting and manipulation. 3 years after Vincent Romano's death, Claire had transformed Romano Fashion America into the empire's most profitable division. She stood at the window of her Chicago headquarters corner office, watching Lake Michigan while reviewing expansion plans for the West Coast market. Isabella knocked and entered without waiting for permission, a habit that still amused Claire after years of working together. The Los Angeles boutique designs look perfect, Isabella announced, spreading architectural plans across Claire's desk. But I have concerns about the San Francisco location. Rent costs, cultural fit. San Francisco values tech innovation over traditional luxury. We need a different approach. Claire studied the plans while 3-year-old Lucia played with fabric samples on the office carpet. Bringing her daughter to work had become routine when childcare schedules conflicted with international conference calls. What if we position San Francisco as our sustainability flagship? Claire suggested. Eco-friendly materials, ethical manufacturing, technology-integrated shopping experience. Brilliant. Appeal to their values while maintaining our quality standards. Their conversation was interrupted by Grace calling with unexpected news. Claire, I just received paperwork from Harrison's lawyers. He's filing for increased custody, claiming his improved circumstances make him a more suitable primary parent. Claire felt familiar anxiety tighten her chest. Despite 3 years of stable coexistence, Harrison remained a source of unpredictable stress. What improved circumstances? He married someone new 6 months ago. Apparently, she has family money. Isabella looked up from the architectural plans. He's attempting to regain power through a new wealthy wife. Seems that way, Grace replied through the speakerphone. Her name is Victoria Ashford, Old Boston money, owns a chain of private schools. Harrison's portraying their marriage as proof he can provide stable family environment for Lucia. Claire sank into her desk chair. So he's basically following the same pattern. Marry for money and status, then use the relationship to attack me. The good news is you're not the vulnerable pregnant woman he divorced. You're Claire Romano, co-president of a billion-dollar company with the best legal representation money can buy. That evening, Claire attended a charity gala with Isabella and Margaret Cole, who had become an unlikely ally in recent years. The event honored women entrepreneurs, and Claire was receiving an award for outstanding achievement in international business. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. 3 years earlier, Claire had been fleeing her own home with a suitcase and no resources. Now she was being celebrated as one of Chicago's most successful business leaders. During her acceptance speech, Claire spotted Harrison and his new wife in the audience. Victoria Ashford was everything Claire had once imagined. Harrison preferred blonde, conventionally pretty, expensively dressed in a way that suggested inherited rather than earned wealth. I want to thank my sister Isabella for her mentorship, Claire said from the podium, my friend Grace for her unwavering support, and my daughter Lucia for reminding me daily what we're building toward. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the greatest discoveries about our own strength. The applause was enthusiastic, but Claire noticed Harrison's uncomfortable expression. He'd clearly hoped to see her struggle, not thrive. After the ceremony, Victoria Ashford approached Claire during the reception. Up close, she was younger than Claire had expected, perhaps 28, with the confident bearing of someone who'd never worried about money. You're not what I expected, Victoria said without preamble. Meaning, Harrison described you as different. Claire waited, curious about Harrison's narrative to his new wife. He said you were unstable during your marriage, that you couldn't handle the pressures of his success. Victoria's voice carried genuine confusion. But you seem quite capable of handling significant pressure. People change, Claire replied diplomatically. Or maybe people reveal who they were always capable of being when given the opportunity. The comment suggested Victoria Ashford was more perceptive than her appearance indicated. Claire found herself wondering if Harrison had chosen another victim, or if this marriage might prove different from their own. How long have you known Harrison? Claire asked. 8 months. We met at a business conference where he was presenting his company's expansion plans. Victoria's smile was tight. Though I've recently learned those expansion plans were somewhat optimistic. Claire felt unexpected sympathy for Harrison's new wife. Victoria, I hope you're happy together. Truly. But if you ever need someone to talk to who understands the challenges of being married to Harrison, please know you can call me. Victoria studied Claire's face carefully. That's surprisingly generous considering he's trying to take your daughter away from you. My daughter needs her father to be happy and stable. If you help provide that stability, then you're helping Lucia. The conversation ended with an exchange of contact information, though Claire doubted Victoria would ever use it. Women rarely wanted to acknowledge warning signs until they were ready to act on them. 2 weeks later, the custody hearing arrived with familiar courthouse drama. Harrison's legal strategy had evolved since their divorce. Instead of portraying Claire as unstable, he now argued that her excessive wealth and business responsibilities made her an absent parent. Your Honor, Harrison's attorney argued, Mrs. Romano Bennett travels internationally for business, works 60-hour weeks, and has essentially outsourced child rearing to nannies and relatives. Mr. Cole can provide hands-on parenting with his wife's support. Grace countered efficiently. Your Honor, my client has built a successful business while maintaining primary custody for 3 years. She travels perhaps 6 days per month, always with childcare arrangements that include family members. Mr. Cole's sudden interest in increased custody coincides suspiciously with his financial difficulties. Judge Thomas Reed, the same judge who'd handled their original custody arrangements, reviewed the case files with obvious exasperation. Mr. Cole, you've requested custody modifications 3 times in 3 years. Each time, the court has found your current arrangements adequate. What's different now? Harrison stood, looking confident in his expensive suit. Your Honor, I've remarried and can provide the stable 2-parent household that my daughter needs. My wife Victoria has extensive experience with children through her school administration work. And Mrs. Romano Bennett's current living situation, Claire stood beside Grace. Your Honor, Lucia lives with me in our home in Lincoln Park. My sister Isabella visits regularly. My former mother-in-law Margaret Cole provides grandmother support, and Dorothy Whitman serves as live-in childcare when needed. Lucia has multiple family relationships and consistent daily routines. In addition, Grace added, my client has established a trust fund ensuring Lucia's educational and financial security regardless of any custody arrangements. Judge Reed made notes while reviewing financial documentation. Mrs. Romano Bennett, the court recognizes your business success, but Mr. Cole raises valid concerns about work-life balance. How do you respond to claims that career demands interfere with parenting? Claire had prepared for this question. Your Honor, I own the company I work for. My schedule is flexible in ways that traditional employment never allowed. I attend Lucia's school events, doctor appointments, and play dates. She comes to my office regularly and has learned that women can build something meaningful while being devoted mothers. Most importantly, Isabella interjected from the gallery, Lucia is being raised to understand her heritage, her responsibilities, and her potential. She's learning 2 languages, experiencing international culture, and developing the confidence that comes from family legacy. Judge Reed looked at Harrison. Mr. Cole, what can you provide that, miss? Romano Bennett cannot. Harrison's answer revealed everything wrong with his approach. I can provide normal childhood, Your Honor, not this pressure cooker environment of international business and family expectations. You want to shield your daughter from success, the judge asked with obvious skepticism. I want to protect her from having to live up to impossible standards. Claire felt anger flash through her system. Your Honor, if I may respond, the judge Reed nodded for Claire to continue. Your Honor, Harrison is essentially arguing that my daughter should be protected from opportunity, heritage, and financial security. He wants to limit her potential because he's uncomfortable with mine. The courtroom fell silent. Even Harrison's lawyer looked uncomfortable with his client's position. Victoria Ashford, sitting in the gallery behind Harrison, wore an expression Claire recognized, the look of someone beginning to see their spouse clearly for the first time. Judge Reed closed the case file. Mr. Cole, the court finds no evidence that Miss Romano Bennett's success has harmed your daughter. Quite the opposite. Lucia appears to be thriving academically, socially, and emotionally. Your request for increased custody is denied. Current arrangements remain in effect. Harrison's face flushed with humiliation and rage. As they left the courthouse, he cornered Claire in the parking garage. This isn't over. he said, his voice tight with anger. You think your Italian family money makes you untouchable, but I'll find a way to prove you're still the same unstable woman I married. Harrison, stop! The voice belonged to Victoria, who had followed them from the courthouse. Just stop! Harrison turned on his new wife. Victoria, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Victoria's voice was calm but firm. I've been watching you for 8 months, and I've just spent 3 hours listening to you try to tear down your daughter's mother instead of building up your relationship with your daughter. Claire felt déjà vu watching another woman realize Harrison's true character in real time. Your ex-wife offered me her support if I ever needed someone to talk to. Victoria continued. At the time, I thought it was strange. Now I understand it was generous. You described her as crazy and vindictive, but she's been nothing but professional and focused on what's best for Lucia. Harrison's expression darkened. Victoria, we'll discuss this at home. No, we won't. Victoria pulled off her wedding ring and handed it to him. I'm going back to Boston tonight. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce. She turned to Claire. Thank you for the warning I didn't know I needed. Victoria walked away, leaving Harrison standing in the parking garage having lost his second wife in 3 years. Claire felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only relief that another woman had escaped his manipulation relatively unscathed. This is your fault, Harrison said to Claire. You poisoned her against me. I barely spoke to her. Harrison, Victoria figured out who you are all by herself. Grace appeared at Claire's shoulder. Harrison, any further harassment will result in restraining order proceedings. Stay away from my client except during scheduled visitation. That evening, Claire sat in her home office reviewing quarterly reports while Lucia played with building blocks on the carpet. The little girl was constructing elaborate structures, narrating her architectural choices with the seriousness of someone planning actual construction. Mama, why was Daddy angry at court today? Claire paused her work. At 3, Lucia was already perceptive about adult emotions and dynamics. Daddy wanted you to spend more time at his house, but the judge said you should keep living here with me. I like living here. Aunt Bella teaches me Italian words, and Grandma Dot makes cookies, and Grandma Margaret reads me stories. What about Daddy's house? Lucia considered the question seriously. Daddy's house is quiet. Victoria was nice, but Daddy gets mad when I talk too much. Claire's heart broke a little. Harrison's inability to connect with his own daughter stemmed from the same narcissistic traits that had destroyed their marriage. Everything had to revolve around his needs and emotions. Lucia, you can always talk to me about anything. Okay, if something makes you uncomfortable or scared, tell me right away. Okay, Mama. The phone rang. Isabella was calling from Milan with news about the European markets and plans for the upcoming Fashion Week presentations. How did the custody hearing go? Isabella asked. Harrison lost. Again. But he also lost his new wife during the proceedings. She realized what kind of man she'd married. Exactly. I actually felt sorry for her. You're more generous than I would be. How's our little heiress handling all the drama? Claire looked at Lucia, who had moved on from building blocks to coloring in a fashion design book Isabella had sent from Italy. She's resilient. She understands more than we give her credit for. But she's not scared. She feels secure. Good, that's what matters. Family security across generations, that's the Romano legacy. 5 years after discovering her Romano heritage, Claire stood at the podium of the Chicago Fashion Institute, delivering the commencement address to graduating design students. In the audience sat Isabella, Grace, Margaret Cole, Dorothy Whitman, and 6-year-old Lucia, wearing a tiny version of the Romano family dress she'd insisted on for the important speech day. A fashion is more than clothing, Claire told the graduates. It's identity, confidence, and connection between cultures. Whether you're designing for global markets or local boutiques, remember that your work helps people express who they are and who they want to become. The applause was enthusiastic, but Claire's attention was drawn to Lucia, who was clapping with the intense concentration of someone who understood this was an important moment for her mother. After the ceremony, the Romano family gathered for dinner at Claire's favorite Italian restaurant. The conversation flowed between English and Italian, with Lucia switching languages effortlessly, a skill that delighted Isabella and impressed the other diners. Mama, when can I design clothes for the company? Lucia asked between bites of pasta. When you're older and have learned all the skills you need, Claire replied. Aunt Bella says I have good color sense. Isabella smiled. She does. But being a Romano means more than having good taste. It means understanding business, treating employees fairly, and preserving family traditions while innovating for the future. Grace raised her wine glass. To the Romano women past, present, and future. To Vincent, Claire added, who never gave up searching for family. To Lucia Romano, Dorothy said, toasting the original Lucia, who protected her daughter by letting her go. The evening ended with Claire tucking Lucia into bed in the room they designed together, princess pink with fashion sketches on the walls, and a bookshelf full of stories about strong women throughout history. Mama, tell me the story about great-great-grandmother's sewing machine, Lucia requested. You've heard that story 100 times. I like it. Tell me again. Claire settled into the bedside chair. Once upon a time, in a little town in Italy, there was a young woman with dreams bigger than her circumstances. As she told the familiar story of Romano family origins, Claire reflected on how much had changed since that devastating day when she'd heard Harrison planning her destruction through a baby monitor. The scared her pregnant woman fleeing with a suitcase had become a business leader featured on magazine covers and invited to speak at industry conferences. But more importantly, she'd become the mother she'd hoped to be, protective but not overprotective, successful but not absent, strong but not hardened by her experiences with narcissistic abuse and divorce settlement battles. Harrison remained part of their lives through weekend visitations, but his influence had diminished to appropriate proportions. He'd started dating again, but seemed to have learned some lessons from his failed marriages. His interactions with Lucia were more attentive, less self-centered. Margaret Cole had become a devoted grandmother who split her time between Chicago and Florida, where she'd retired after selling the family construction business. Her transformation from disapproving mother-in-law to loving family member proved that people could grow when circumstances demanded it. Grace had expanded her practice to focus exclusively on family law cases involving high-net-worth divorces and custody disputes. Her experience with Claire's case had taught her how financial independence could transform women's ability to escape destructive relationships. Dorothy Whitman, now 79, had become the family historian, documenting Romano stories for future generations. She spent afternoons with Lucia, teaching her about their shared heritage and the importance of family loyalty across cultural boundaries. Isabella divided her time between Milan and Chicago, with the sisters alternating leadership responsibilities based on seasonal business demands. Their partnership had evolved into genuine friendship built on mutual respect and shared commitment to the company their grandfather had entrusted to them. Most surprisingly, Claire had discovered she genuinely enjoyed the fashion industry. What had begun as inherited responsibility had become creative passion. She understood American consumer psychology in ways that complemented Isabella's European sophistication, creating marketing strategies that resonated across cultural boundaries. Romano Fashion America had grown beyond anyone's projections, with boutiques in 12 cities and online sales reaching international markets. The company's commitment to ethical manufacturing and sustainable practices had attracted younger consumers while maintaining the luxury standards that defined the Romano brand. On quiet evenings, Claire sometimes stood in Lucia's nursery, now converted to a playroom but still containing the rocking chair, where she'd first heard Harrison's betrayal. The room that had once represented her deepest vulnerability had become a symbol of her transformation. She'd learned that survival wasn't just about escaping harmful relationships, it was about building something meaningful from the wreckage of broken dreams. Her millionaire ex-husband had inadvertently given her the greatest gift possible by showing her exactly who she didn't want to be and who she was capable of becoming. The midlife transformation from abandoned wife to global business leader had required courage she'd never known she possessed. But more importantly, it had required accepting help from women, supporting women, Grace's legal expertise, Isabella's business mentorship, Margaret's late-blooming wisdom, Dorothy's protective love. Claire had entered marriage believing in fairy tales about love, conquering all obstacles. She'd discovered that some obstacles, narcissistic abuse, financial control, systematic manipulation, required practical solutions rather than romantic optimism. Divorce settlement negotiations and custody battles were won through preparation and resources, not hope and patience. But she'd also learned that financial independence was only part of the solution. True transformation required understanding her own worth, independent of anyone else's validation. Harrison's opinion of her had ceased to matter the moment she'd stopped needing his approval to make decisions about her life. The Romano family necklace had become more than inherited jewelry. It was a daily reminder that she belonged to something larger than her individual struggles. 5 generations of women had built the empire she now helped lead, each contributing skills and perspectives that strengthened the whole. Lucia would grow up understanding her heritage without the fear and uncertainty that had defined Claire's early years. She would know exactly who she was, where she came from, and what resources were available to support her dreams. Most importantly, she would understand that being a Romano meant using privilege responsibly and treating all people with dignity, regardless of their financial circumstances. The fairy tale hadn't been about finding Prince Charming. It had been about discovering the queen she'd always carried inside herself. Claire Romano Bennett, co-president of Romano Fashion Empire, mother to Lucia Dorothy Romano Bennett, sister to Isabella Romano, granddaughter to Vincent Romano, and survivor of narcissistic abuse, stood at her bedroom window looking out at Lake Michigan. Tomorrow would bring new business challenges, continued custody arrangements with Harrison, ongoing responsibilities to thousands of employees worldwide, and the daily work of raising a strong, confident daughter. Tonight, she was simply grateful. The pregnant woman who'd fled her marriage with nothing but the clothes on her back had discovered she'd always been an heiress. She just needed to claim her crown, and she was just getting started. The end underscore 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 underscore. Epilogue 10 years later. 16-year-old Lucia Romano Bennett stood at her mother's old desk in the Romano Fashion America headquarters, reviewing design sketches for her summer internship project. She'd inherited her great-grandmother Lucia's artistic talent, her mother's business instincts, and her Aunt Isabella's fierce determination. "Mama, I want to show you something," Lucia called to Claire, who was reviewing marketing reports in the adjacent conference room. Claire looked up from quarterly projections to see her daughter holding a sketch of a jacket design that somehow perfectly balanced Italian craftsmanship with American practicality. "It's beautiful, sweetheart, very sophisticated. I call it the Starting Over collection, for women who need clothes that make them feel powerful while they're rebuilding their lives." Claire felt tears prick her eyes. Her daughter understood, without being told explicitly, that fashion could be armor for women facing their most challenging moments. "I love it," Claire said. "Let's show Aunt Isabella when she visits next month." Lucia grinned. "She's going to say I need to understand production costs and market demographics before I get excited about designs." "She's going to say that because it's true, but she's also going to be proud that you're thinking about the women who wear our clothes, not just the clothes themselves." Harrison had remarried for the 4th time 2 years earlier, to a kindergarten teacher who seemed genuinely kind and appropriately unimpressed by his attempts at manipulation. He'd finally learned to be a decent father during his weekend visits, though he would never be the primary influence in Lucia's life. Margaret Cole had died peacefully the previous winter, leaving behind detailed journals about the Cole family history and a heartfelt letter apologizing for her early treatment of Claire. Her final gift was a college fund for Lucia and a donation to support other women going through difficult divorces. Dorothy Whitman, at 85, remained sharp and engaged, splitting her time between the Chicago headquarters and the Florida retirement community, where she'd become famous for her stories about "My granddaughter, the fashion empire heiress." Grace had been appointed to the state Supreme Court, bringing her decades of experience advocating for women's rights to the highest levels of legal decision-making. Isabella had married a Milan prosecutor 2 years earlier, a man secure enough in his own success to appreciate his wife's business empire. They were expecting their first child, which meant the next generation of Romano leaders was already being planned. But the most important change was Claire herself. The scared, abandoned pregnant woman was now completely gone, replaced by someone who understood her own power and used it thoughtfully. She'd learned that true strength wasn't about never being vulnerable. It was about recovering from vulnerability with grace and wisdom. Romano fashion had become more than a luxury brand. Under Claire and Isabella's leadership, it had pioneered ethical manufacturing practices, created scholarship programs for young designers, and established support networks for women entrepreneurs worldwide. The scared girl who'd once hidden in a nursery while her husband planned her destruction had built something that would outlast any individual relationship or personal crisis. And every morning, when Claire fastened the Romano family necklace around her throat, she whispered a silent thank you to Lucia, both the great-grandmother who'd started with nothing and the mother who'd sacrificed everything to keep her daughter safe. Some fairy tales end with marriage. Others begin when the marriage ends. Claire Romano's story was the second kind. If this story gave you chills and reminded you that you're stronger than you know, smash that like button. It really helps the algorithm share these empowering stories with more people who need to hear them. Drop a comment below telling me what part of Claire's journey resonated most with you. And don't forget to share this with any strong woman in your life who needs a reminder of her own power. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell because trust me, you don't want to miss the incredible stories coming next. Until then, remember, you're not just surviving, you're preparing for your comeback.